What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast. I am your host, Chris Raybon, and I am joined once again by my fellow Academy Award betting expert, Collin Whitchurch. You can find him across all social media at Whitchurch. Just coming off a great episode one. I mean, this guy's a complete maniac with this Oscar stuff, and we got a whole nother episode to get to. All of the bets we're making in the non-top 8 categories. So we already did picture, director, the screenplays, and the acting categories. If you want to check that out, it's up now. But now we get to the real fun stuff: the animated shorts and the documentaries and the costumes and the technical awards that no one knows what's going on. So it's going to be a fun show. We got a lot of bets for you. Let's get going. Let's get into the fun part of the podcast, because now we get to go off the map with some of these other categories, and there are some real interesting markets here. So we each have a bunch of bets that we've made on a lot of different categories this year. Collin, I want to start with best sound, because it's a niche category. It used to be 2, now it's 1. But this is one that you don't see very often. So I actually want your thoughts on it. This is one where the favorite in the betting market does not match up to what we're seeing among the Gold Derby experts. Dune minus 400 in the betting markets, but in terms of Gold Derby, it's a little bit less than a 50-50 shot. And Wicked is plus 600, but it actually leads among Gold Derby experts. Not quite a majority, but right there at 47%. Also has about a third of editor and top 24 user support. And the fact that editors and top 24 users on Gold Derby are a little bit lower than the experts is actually a good signal, because since 2019, 3 winners have been backed by fewer than 22% of editors and top 24 users on Gold Derby, including the Zone of Interest last year. And that had just 8% of the editor backing. So this is one where, the experts are the ones that are the most predictive, and they're saying something's up here. So what are your thoughts here? Because we don't see this too often, where it just the favorites don't line up at all.
I really like this look for you. It wasn't one that I had written down personally, but I definitely see the mindset behind it. Ben Zausmer only has Dune at 40.2% for the record, and has Wicked as its most likely challenger at 23.15%. The
That's still
confusing
value
thing
at
with
6-1. That
yeah
23.1% is what? That should be around 3-1, a little higher than 3-1.
yeah I mean, Zausmer's model does that quite a bit, because I think it boosts up
Regression to
to
the
like
mean.
30 to 1
Yeah.
a little bit too much. Like if you went by like literal value, every single like 4th and 5th place film would be worth betting on.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the case here, but the thing that makes this data a little bit more complicated is, as you mentioned, this is no longer a 2 category award. It's now 1. This is only the 5th year of that. So the data is a little bit more difficult to parse, I feel like. It's also interesting that Dune is the favorite against literally 3 musicals in a sound category. In Wicked, well, A Complete Unknown is not a music-based movies. In Wicked, A Complete Unknown, and Amelia Perez. So I completely see your rationale behind betting on an underdog here. I'm personally staying away from this. Dune, if I recall, won this category with the first iteration of this film, and so
that's why it's
would be
overvalued,
shocked
I think,
if
though.
what
You don't
was
think
that?
so? Like, I think that's why it's overvalued, though. I think
That could
this is
very
a
well
hard
be.
category. No one, and everyone's just going back to old reliable Dune. But like I said, there's been an upset like half the time since they switched, because no one knows what's going on. So this is my favorite bet. Like, I think this is the biggest delta between what's most likely to happen and what the market is predicting. Like, I don't think you're going to find a bigger delta. That's why I wanted to hit on this category first. So like I love this. I think you should get a little down, Collin. I think you're going to be kicking yourself if
I mean, yeah, I think you've probably talked me into it. If we're being completely honest, I think that when I was doing my initial research, I probably saw, data skewed because of the change in the category. Decently strong favorite, one before. Let's stay away. But yeah, you've talked me into it 100% because especially with that Gold Derby data. And the fact that, as you mentioned, maybe the uncertainty is actually a good thing and a reason to pick an underdog here. So, yeah, I mean, I'll join you on a wicked wager here for sure. A wicked wager, as they might say elsewhere.
Yeah, man. I mean, again, I think this is the bread and butter of betting this kind of market. If you just try to find the deltas between what is most likely to happen, and the again, the sports books and these markets aren't super sharp. They tend, as you've pointed out, Collin, they get sharper over time naturally, but that also kind of just mirrors the momentum and whatnot. And we've seen quite a bit of smoke screens. No one really knows what the heck's going on, and so
I will say to go along with your point. If you're going to bet Wicked in this category, you might hop on KALSHI and bet. They have a category on how many Oscars will Wicked win. Wicked's favored in two categories, costume design and production design, I believe, off the top of my head. It's got a puncher's chance in a couple others. If you believe that they're going to win this category and they're going to win the two that they're favored in, 3 on KALSHI is trading at 14% right now. So maybe throw some down there as well.
Yeah, that's a great call out because I do think that they like those awards, the costume and production, those visual awards, they're kind of trending where we probably know who's getting those awards, and for costume and production, it seems like Wicked is going to run away. And the important thing with Wicked is it is a Best Picture nominee. So it's not like it's just, coming out of nowhere and all of a sudden we're just like, it's going to win and beat this like established juggernaut in sequel in Dune. Like this is also a Best Picture nominee. So another category that I think is quite fascinating, and I know you think so as well, so I'll let you talk about it first. Best live action short. That's right. We're betters. Like, we're not everywhere you go, you see like it's like an afterthought with these short film categories. Again, I think no one knows what the hell is kind of going on in these, but these are a lot of fun, and a lot of these you can watch pretty quickly because they're short. So talk to me about the market for best live action short.
Yeah, so generally I'm just looking for something at plus money in these markets because these are the categories with the least amount of data points in terms of predictability. And with this one, I think that The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent is the most logical bet here because it is, first of all, at least as of the most recent odds grab I did, nothing is at minus money. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe that's changed, Chris. So you're getting good value here on almost anyone because I think it's such a toss-up. There are a couple other short categories where I would go even longer than The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent, but I know that Gold Derby experts are pretty heavily on that film. And it's the few precursor shows that have short categories. It has done well there. So while Alien is right up there with it, all the data, the little amount of data we have on this points to The Man Who Could Not Remain Silent. But in general, with these short categories, I think they are the ones where you see a good amount of upsets. And this is one where the odds makers are really just throwing their hands up and saying, we have no fucking idea. So let's take a shot on one of these plus money picks.
Yeah, and this is again where I think Gold Derby is very valuable because these are people just like somebody like myself might be essentially paid to watch football, and like these are the people paid to watch these films, and about 45 to 65% of these Gold Derby experts think that the man who could not remain silent will win. It is the favorite among the experts, and it's the favorite among the 24 users who predicted the best out of the thousands and thousands on the site last year. So and it's about a split with editors. Since there's the smallest number of editors, so we got just one editor vote flipping could flip the man who could not remain silent to a favorite among them as well. But overall, it is above 50%, among all the experts, and yet Alien is the betting market favorite on KALSHI at 37%, whereas the man who could not remain silent is at 34%. Depending on, like, if you look at DK, you see a man who could not remain silent is tied with Alien, both at plus 150. So this is another category where you're getting a lot of value, a lot of delta between what the market thinks and what the people who know and spend the most time watching these films think. And these are always tough for me to predict even after I watch them, so I'm not gonna give like my 2 cents or anything like that, but I will just say that this is another one where I think it is presenting pretty strong value here. So yeah, a man who could not remain silent is the play. Animated short, another one of these categories where seems ripe for an upset. We have the KALSHI odds at Wander to Wonder is the favorite, but it's at 48%. So it's not even better than 50-50 to win that category, but it's minus 250 on DK. And if you're talking about a film that one place has it below 50-50, minus 250, I mean you're talking about close to 70% odds, and that's what's implied over on DraftKings. And then if you look at Gold Derby, what you see is that again, it's not the favorite. It actually just has 13% of the experts picking it, where Beautiful Men has 40%. So I'm gonna roll Beautiful Men as the favorite on Gold Derby among the experts at 5-1 on DK. It's on KALSHI, it's at 20%. I like those odds, and I know you like some other long shots as well here.
Yeah, this is again, there's less data points here beyond Gold Derby, which I think is definitely reliable, and I support you're using them for these picks for sure. Wander to Wonder, I think, is understandably a favorite. It won Best Short Subject at the Annie Awards, head to head against Beautiful Men and In the Shadow of the Cypress, which is a big data point. I believe that 2005 was the last time those categories didn't correlate. The only thing that gives me pause with Beautiful Men is that while the Academy's voting body has grown younger and more diverse over the years, it is still not as far there as we might like. And Beautiful Men has some animated nudity in it that might turn off a certain segment of voters. Maybe I'm overplaying that a little bit, but both In the Shadow of the Cypress and Yuck are a little bit more digestible, I think, and that's basically my rationale behind taking a stab at them. I also kind of think that in a short category, nothing should be 40-1 because of how unpredictable they are. So it's kind of just like a throw some couch change in there and see what happens, because upsets are bound to happen here.
Yeah, and I actually agree with you. I wouldn't mind. I think I'm gonna go sprinkle some on Yuck, Cypress especially, Yuck, I think it actually got shorter. Yeah, so
Oh,
Yuck is
Yuck moved out
interesting.
of range before we recorded. I
Right. Yeah.
forgot.
So it was 9-1 on DK and it went to 3-1 overnight or yesterday. We're recording,
Yeah.
the day before we're
Yeah.
recording
So
this on
I do
Wednesday.
not support
So
a Yuck bet anymore.
yeah, so Yuck is
I
not
would have at
really in
9-1.
the.
But yeah, in the shadow of the cypress, a tiny sprinkle. That's all I'm touching in
But
this
I will say
category.
this. Again, I don't really think there's any true like steam or anything. You can't pay attention to any like late movement that in this kind of market.
At this point, if
But
there's steam, it's financially based. That's all.
right, yeah, but like yeah, there's definitely someone who at least someone who kind of saw what we saw and said, hey, Yuck's odds are way too long. And so that's not the worst thing for it to happen, but it's just not great for Wander to Wonder unless it's just like, okay, there's too many, like there's too many choices now, and these categories are one where I think not everyone votes and not everyone necessarily watches all the films, so there's always going to be some unpredictability there, but still a great category to bet long shots. And I just like that. Again, people who are paid to do this year round seem to think more than any other film it's going to be Beautiful Men, and that is not reflected in the market, and that's all I'm looking for. Again, at 5-1, I just need to win one out of every 5 to break even. So again, I think this is a really it's a strong play, but so is Cypress at it's up to plus 5,000 on DraftKings. You gotta sprinkle a little bit on that. Then you kind of covered in more than one with more than one outcome in this very unpredictable market. Let's go to best animated feature. What are you seeing there, Collin?
Yeah, this is probably my favorite bet of the Oscars. It was my favorite bet last year, was in this category, coincidentally. I picked The Boy and the Heron to upset the Spider-Verse sequel in this category, and that played out in our favor. So I'm going back to the well at this category, but I'm going with the favorite this time in A Wild Robot at minus 250. I think that this is undervalued to the point where I would probably bet it up to about minus 900. That's how confident I am in A Wild Robot winning this award. Ben Zausmer's model paints a little bit of uncertainty here. He has Flow up at 18.2% and Wallace and Gromit at 12.7%. But the Wild Robot has cleaned up everywhere. Every precursor award it has won. The Annies, the Producers Guild, the Critics' Choice Award, the ADG. It's also worth pointing out that obviously people mostly see this as A Wild Robot against Flow. But Wallace and Gromit gets discredited a little bit by the fact that sequels don't generally perform well in this category. We don't have a ton of animated feature data. It's only been around since the 90s. But Wallace and Gromit, I think, is ruled out. So you're looking at A Wild Robot versus Flow. Flow is also nominated for Best International Feature. It's a fascinating film, actually, if you haven't seen it. It's one of 3 films I saw this year that were completely devoid of dialogue. Along with Hundreds of Beavers, it's probably among my favorite films of the entire year. Also, shout out to Hundreds of Beavers. Best film of the year that was not nominated for any Oscars, maybe alongside Challengers. Anyway, A Wild Robot, though, one of the other strongest data points for me, along with all of the other precursor shows it has won, is the fact that it's nominated for 2 other Oscars, which isn't very common in the animated category. I mentioned Flow, it's nominated for International Feature, but it's not nominated in any technical categories. The Wild Robot, in addition to Best Animated Feature, is nominated for Best Sound and for Best Original Score. I think that the technical achievements kind of put it over the top. It's also a film that almost everyone saw in terms of the voting body. More people probably saw it than any animated nominee other than Inside Out 2, which is a long shot and not going to win. So yeah, A Wild Robot's my favorite. bet here. I think minus 250 is very easy juice to swallow. And again, I would do it up much higher than that.
Yeah, it's like not my style really in these, but I agree that it is a bit undervalued. I mean, just looking at Kalshi, it's at 73%, whereas you just look at the Gold Derby experts, 83%, the editors 90%, and the top 24 users 78%. So regardless of who you're looking at, and it's undervalued. It's just that these things present themselves because there's not a lot of people like you that are willing to swallow the juice. They just look at it and like, all right, yeah, next. So I do agree. I think there's some value there, and I think I don't think it's going to be that close when they tally up the votes. I think
this makes me feel better too, Chris. We took a lot of underdogs early, and now we're giving out minus 250s out there. There might even be more down the road. But yeah, I think at the Oscars you're going to see a lot of big minus money winners. You've got to pick some, and some are going to still have value. And I just think this is a category where there is one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's what at a minimum, because a lot of these things, and people don't, especially if I think you're not like a hardcore gambler or anything like that. You're not a DJ and you're not betting all year round. Maybe you come around just to bet the Oscars and a few other things that interest you. It's not necessarily apparent what some of those big minus numbers mean, right? So people have kind of working out those implied probabilities. It just looks like, oh, this is something I don't want to bet, but when you look at it and you say, okay, it's minus 250, but it should actually be closer to minus 500 or even minus 1,000. That still is value. Value is value, no matter how you look at it. You still win the same amount. You still have the same percentage edge if you're looking at it from that standpoint. So I have nothing against it, and I think it's just not a sexy bet for a lot of people, but that's how you have to look at it. Value is value, and it happens to be a big favorite, still undervalued in the market. Let's talk about best international feature. This is one where it is projected to be a lot closer. I'm Still Here is a short favorite. It's minus 140 leading the way, on DraftKings. And I know this one is kind of a tough call for you. So talk to me about best international film, which is up about 61% on Kalshi. And then you got Emilia Perez at 38%. So a 2-film race here.
Yeah. Any film, any category that Emilia Perez is in contention for is probably going to be a stay away from me, because we really don't know how the voting body is going to react to the controversies around this film. At the top of this recording, I mentioned how at the beginning of January, Anora was fourth in Best Picture odds. One of the films ahead of it was Emilia Perez. It was essentially second behind The Brutalist in betting odds. That's how far it's fallen. It still got nominated for Best Picture. It got nominated for more Oscars than any international film ever, the most this year. And since then, it has completely gone in the tank, to the point where it was only announced a couple days ago that its star, Carla Sofia Gasson, is going to attend the ceremony. She's been skipping most of the shows in the lead up to the Oscars after some very bad tweets of hers resurfaced. And that's not even to mention the fact that it was already a contentious film to begin with. Mm-hmm. The Mexican community has spoken out against its depiction of Mexicans. The transgender community has spoken out against its depiction of transgender people. It's a very contentious movie to begin with. And then you add in the controversy surrounding its star, and it's like, how do you even judge that against like the voting body? Like, yeah, they voted it into all these categories, and that was before most of this controversy came up. And now they've got to vote again, and maybe they are turned off by it. So basically what I have landed on is if I'm Still Here was still the underdog to Amelia Perez, I would probably bet it, but I think that value's gone. There is a market, again, like a couple of these others. Amelia Perez is definitely going to win Best Supporting Actress for Zoe Saldana. It is very likely, almost definitely going to win Best Original Song. It has 2 nominated there. And depending on your sports book, those 2 films are either first and second or first and third on the odds board. So FanDuel has over under 2.5 Oscars for Amelia Perez. The under is plus 112. So if you can't get I'm Still Here at plus money, you bet under 2.5 at plus 112, and you're essentially betting on I'm Still Here winning that category, which would lock in Amelia Perez more than likely at under 2.5 Oscar wins.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I was kind of right there with you, but I did see some data that convinced me to take the value here. So it is undervalued if you're just looking at Gold Derby. About 63% of experts and 87% of top 24 users, which are out of all, site wide, just the top 24 most accurate Oscar predictors from last year, they are backing it. And this is, I believe, the only category since we've been tracking Gold Derby data, again, 13 years, the only category they've never gotten wrong. It's the favorite.
Wow.
Their favorite. It's never lost. Now, it's like the stock market. Past performance, not necessarily predictive of future performance, but the fact that there is an edge here, just numbers wise, when you're just looking at the percentages compared to the odds in the market, and then you're taking into account that they just haven't got this wrong yet. And international feature it's another one of these things where you kind of have to know the industry and know some films that a lot of people betting may not. So I trust them. I do, and I do understand the case against Amelia Perez. Some of the time, I think you want to fade a lot of the noise, and I think you said if I'm Still Here was still an underdog, you would bet it. I actually also look at it from the standpoint of I wish Amelia Perez was a longer underdog, because then I think there would be an opportunity to be contrarian there and bet on a film that did get a lot of recognition before this controversy, or controversies, plural, so to speak. But that's not the case. The case is that we're seeing value on I'm Still Here. So I'm going to take that value. But I do agree. I think, if the price was right, there's going to be uncertainty in this category that isn't in some of the others with Amelia Perez, but it is real. Like, we've kind of seen this film, go downhill a little bit. Just like I think there's an argument to be made that we're kind of seeing it a little with the Brutalist as well. So it is 2025. People are just a lot more aware of this stuff, and whether you agree or disagree that it should affect your other people's opinions on art, and kind of separating personal views and things like that from art. The bottom line is that a lot of people do, and these voters aren't exempt to that. So that's kind of my thoughts on this one. So rolling with I'm Still Here, MCing some value on it. Film editing, another one of these categories where it's right around minus 140 for the favorite. The favorite is Conclave, and this is one where you do like Conclave. So I know you're not voting it for Best Picture, but you do like it here in film editing.
I do like Conclave here. My initial inclination on this category was to stay away because after the LA fires, the Editing Society's awards got postponed until after the Academy Awards. We saw the same thing happen last year with the Writers Guild because of the strikes. That made the writing categories a lot harder to predict. And this year, the Ace Eddie Awards don't actually take place until March 14th. So we don't have that as a data point toward the best film editing at the Oscars. It's also tricky because the other precursor awards we could rely on, such as the CCA, the HCA Astras, they went to Challengers. Challengers has dominated this category. Challengers isn't nominated in this category, which is absurd, but beside the point. Every film here is, below 50% implied probability, except for Conclave. Cole Curtis has Conclave at 71%. It won at the BAFTAs, one of the few that Challengers didn't win. It's been the favorite since this market opened. I think this is one where it is solidly in its favor. I think minus 140, minus 135, minus 140 range is very good value. I'd probably go up to about minus 200 on it, just because I think that while there is sometimes uncertainty means you don't want to bet it. Sometimes uncertainty means there's value. Generally, if there's uncertainty, that means the value's on the underdog. In this case, I think uncertainty means the books aren't going as heavy on the favorite as they should be.
Yeah, and I think there's some other things that kind of, if you're really breaking it down, also point to Conclave, which, to be clear, is going up against Honora as the top challenger at plus 155. You also got the Brutalist at plus 750, and then Amelia Perez and Wicked. So it's kind of like the best picture all over again a little bit. But I do think that, number one, what I talked about earlier is interesting, is that you have Baker here also nominated for editing, in addition to that being that what is it, the favorite in the director category. Now, I think if you look at this film objectively and you say, all right, well, is it a better film? Is it directing better or is the editing better? I would go directing. So this is another one where I think how the voters vote in other categories could ultimately influence how they end up voting in this one. So you are kind of dealing with that, but I just think, I think that that Baker wins the directing category, and that pushes me again to them saying, okay, let's go with Conclave here. The Gold Derby experts and editors do agree there is value from that standpoint as well, compared to the minus 140 odds. It's about 60% on KALSHI. You have 67% of Gold Derby experts. You have 90% of the editors backing it to win. And as you mentioned, there really just isn't much we can glean from the precursors, but Gold Derby has been right 6 of the last 7 years in what I think is generally a pretty challenging category. Like, anytime you see these technical categories, I just think people don't know exactly what's going on. Like, even, there's just a lot of chaos in these categories. So could there be an upset? Could Honora win? Absolutely. But I think the fact that Baker is the favorite in directing and get even better job. It is impressive, to be nominated in both these categories. It's not something that happens. Like, pretty much unheard of. But so it is very cool. But ultimately, yeah, I think the value is on Conclave here. All right, I know you got a couple of other bets that you're looking at. Some of them are kind of more longer shots, but production design, we talked about that earlier. You do like Wicked at minus 340. It is a big favorite, but I do agree here. But talk to me about production design and why you can't see any other film upending Wicked, who by the way is going up against Nosferatu, The Brutalist, Conclave, and Dune Part 2, all of which are 5-1 or longer.
Yeah, I can kind of rapid fire through a couple of my final bets here because I don't have a ton to say on any of them. Production design, I think, is Wicked's really strongly. Both Ben Zausmer and Cole Curtis have it north of 60% win probability. I think Nosferatu or The Brutalist could potentially contend. But again, you see 60% minus 400. It doesn't really make sense. But again, with the Oscars, we're looking at it a little bit differently. considering so many of.
I mean, have you seen this? Like, if you just look at it, that film versus I mean, I think it just stands out, right? Like, it's pretty obvious. Like, I'm not even this category for me. Both of the production and the costumes for me were just. The eyes told the whole story. Like, I didn't even need to really jump into the data, and if it did disagree, I wasn't going to be convinced. Like, this is
and I think that the Academy wants to reward Wicked in some way. It was the biggest movie of 2024. There are reports now that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are going to actually open the show with some sort of performance. I think it's going to be probably a medley of Wicked songs. Obviously, none of those songs were eligible for Best Original Song, so they got to get those songs in there somewhere. Got to have the TV ratings go through the freaking roof when those two go on stage and sing Defying Gravity together. I mean, come on. But production design, costume design are the most likely ways that they're going to reward it. There's a tiny bit of upset potential there, but I do think that considering the amount of categories that the favorite has less than 50% chance, the fact that we're at north of 60% for this makes me extremely confident in it. Best original score, I just talked about how I was going to bet Amelia Perez under 2.5 wins, and I was going to try to stay away from films where Amelia Perez was one of the top contenders. Well, Amelia Perez isn't one of the top contenders for Best Original Score. It's a long shot at 16-1, and I think that's worth a sprinkle. Like film editing, this is a category that's complicated by the Challengers snub. Challengers has cleaned house in this category across the precursors. I don't know how the Academy failed to nominate it. It's fucking insane. But Amelia Perez won the HMMAs, the HCA Astras, which has aligned with the Oscars 5 of the last 7 years, and it won the IPA Satellite Awards. Again, the uncertainty here is just how much the controversy around the film is going to hurt its chances. I think a sprinkle at 16-1 is worth a shot. And the last category that I'll talk about, and then I'll let you get to yours, is Best Documentary Feature. I mostly just want to shout out No Other Land, which is a fucking incredible, deserving favorite. It doesn't have a U.S. distributor. It never got distribution in the U.S. It was made over several years by a Palestinian-Israeli collective, documented the destruction of Masafer Yatta. And the documentary feature category is super complicated by the fact that, like some of these other categories, they don't often nominate. The Academy doesn't often nominate the film that wins all the precursor awards. Like the Superman Christopher Reeve documentary has won at the PGA. It's won at so many other award shows. But the fact that No Other Land might be seen as controversial to some, and the fact that it hasn't been seen by that many. I saw it at the Beautiful Music Box, which I'm going to shout out again because it did get some independent distribution at a couple of theaters in America. The fact that there's so much uncertainty over how many people saw it, how people reacted to it, makes me feel like it's worth sprinkling the other two potential contenders in this category, which are Porcelain War and Sugarcane. Porcelain War won at the Directors Guild. It beat out two other contenders, including Sugarcane. So again, I'm not putting a ton of money on either of these films, but I think if there is a path to an upset, it would be one of those films. And I don't think No Other Land is safe enough to be a minus money favorite here. That's all I've got.
Yeah, like this, I mean, we're talking about documentaries here. Like, I imagine, like, who knows what's gonna happen here? Like imagine watching all these other great films and then just having to sit through a bunch of documentary features. Like, yeah, I'm a documentary guy, and that still doesn't sound like the most fun
you're
thing.
talking to a guy who my film studies minor was a focus on documentary film. Like, I studied the shit out of that category, and yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I actually we'll close it out because I know you got some fun exotics, so we'll close out the categories and then we'll get to your exotics and we'll get out of here. But speaking of documentaries, I do see some value in the documentary short category. On I Am Ready Warden, it is at 45%. On KALSHI, it is considered the favorite. On Gold Derby, 59% of the experts, 56% of the top 24 users. So not a massive value, but you're still getting a favorite at plus money. On KALSHI, you know, that 45%, I think should be north of 50%. So yeah, we gotta finish it up with some documentary bets. I mean, how else do we close the show? But you have some really fun exotics where it's kind of, it's not the just betting on who wins the category, but kind of, you kind of alluded to some of them as we went through this. But talk to me about your favorite exotic bets for the 2025 Oscars.
Well, you talked me out of one of them, if we're being completely honest, because one of these was at KALSHI on Dune 2 to win exactly 2 Oscars. That would have been visual effects and sound, but we're not going with Dune Part 2 in the best sound category anymore. And in fact, that correlates with the other exotic I had, which was on Wicked to win exactly 2. But if we're betting Wicked to win best sound, that screws up the other exotic. Anyway, maybe what we actually are doing here is we bet on Dune to win 1 Oscar. We bet on Wicked to win 3 Oscars, and that's gonna pay out pretty well at KALSHI. I don't know if you have it up.
Okay, wait. Right, let's before we get out of here, what are we doing? What are the odds for the one where we thought, where I think Wicked is gonna upset Dune? Like, what are the odds on your exotic?
Let me find it here.
Because remember, Wicked is like 6-1, so we could just bet both of these. Like
yeah. You're right, and guarantee a profit.
Exactly. Like this is kind of how DGens approach this. Like you're not trying to be a predictor. You're trying to be a bettor. If you want to be a predictor, just pull.
Wicked to win 3 Oscars, which would be the upset hitting, is 14%. Wicked to win 2 Oscars, which would be chalk, is 74%.
And that's the one you liked.
That was the one I liked before you talked me into the best sound.
I mean, yeah, 74. I didn't realize it was that high. I thought when you said exotic, you were gonna have like some long shots for it. I didn't think you were gonna go with some chalk. I mean,
it was 68% at the time, and it wasn't necessarily when I said exotic, I didn't necessarily mean long shot. I meant not who wins the category bets.
I was all excited. I thought you were. I didn't even fully look at that part of the outline. I just saw exotic. Literally, there's the word exotic in capital letters, and it's all filled out by you on our outline, on our show outline. So I just assumed it was a bunch of long shots. That's totally my fault. Sorry for the false alarm, everyone out there. We will see ourselves out. Great stuff, Collin. For everyone out there listening, you can find Collin Whitchurch at Cal Hit Church on all social media. I'm at Chris Raybon on X. Be sure to download the award-winning free Action Network app. If you're into betting, you can track expert bets and your own bets. Great app. So be sure to download that. Action Network. We have a Discord as well. If you want to check that out. And we'll be on now, but enjoy the show. Let's get this money.